to join the call. Hi, everyone. We're just waiting for a couple people to join the call, and then we'll get started.
So good morning or good afternoon, depending on which side of the pond you are, as David just mentioned here before we came online.
And thank you for taking the time to join us.
Yes, as people trickle in, maybe we can kind of get started here, and then I'll just let people in as you present. Take it away, Matthew.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This is a webinar on hydrogen collaboration opportunities for Canada and CHFCA. So I'm Matthew Klippenstein with the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. We have a series of speakers here today, and perhaps I'll just mention their names for the moment. It might be a little bit too difficult to try and repeatedly switch screens, so we'll just keep this one at the top for now. But we have let's see, we have Janet Howard from Fasken here on the Canadian side. We also have Mervat Petr from the Czech side here. There's myself. There's also Sarka Wysova and David Mueller, I believe. If I'm English doesn't have accents, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to know if one is saying names correctly. Anyway, I'm Matthew Klippenstein. I'm Regional Director for Western Canada for the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to have everyone with us here today. I'll go through a little bit of information about our association and our members, possible opportunities for collaboration and trade. Before I kick in, we have a thing here in Canada where we, in many regions, we want to acknowledge that we are conducting our business on the traditional unceded territory of many Indigenous nations. In this case, where I am, it's the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So we hope to work together with them for mutual prosperity. All right, let's see if I can advance this slide properly. So I don't have many strong links to Czechia, no relatives. But one little bit of trivia. So Jaromír Jágr is the second highest scoring hockey player in NHL history, a Czech legend, Hall of Fame member, when he chooses to officially retire. And when he was drafted, the year was 1990, the draft took place in Vancouver. And so a very young, much skinnier me was able to get his autograph before he'd even played an NHL game. That concludes my personal ties to the Czech Republic and to Czechia. We'll go forward with the business side at this point. So the Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association, we are the voice of Canada's hydrogen sector. We have a number of roles that we play. We do advocacy in terms of our work promoting the sector, showing how the sector can lead to economic growth with emissions reduction simultaneously. We do a lot of work with government relations, in support of public policy. We do a lot of communications. Hydrogen is still fairly new to many people. And we also do networking and trade missions. This would be an example of the networking side where we haven't actually gone all the way to the Czech Republic, to Czechia, but we hope to help form business ties between companies from each of our sides of the Atlantic. I'll give a little bit of information about Canada's hydrogen sector. So much as Czechia has its own hydrogen strategy, Canada published its hydrogen strategy in 2021. We do have export plans both to the Pacific Ocean side as well as through the Atlantic Ocean side. We'll get to that a little bit further. I know there's keen interest. We do have hydrogen production expertise in the many different ways of producing low emissions hydrogen. The sector in Canada, last time we measured a couple of years back, had about $500 million Canadian in revenues. That is a somewhat smaller number in euros. although I suppose Czechia uses its own currency. And we have about 4,000 workers in the sector. The products that our companies have developed to power about 8,000 buses and trucks, heavy-duty trucks around the world, and have been deployed in 42 different countries. So we're very proud of those little things. We do have hydrogen export ambitions. We know this is a matter of great interest in Europe, in Czechia. So I've got here, there's a Pacific side of export ambitions, as well as on the Atlantic side. What I've put there is some of the planned initial operation dates for these projects for exports. These projects are basically they're essentially centered on wind. We have a phenomenal wind resource there, electrolyzing water to make hydrogen, converting that hydrogen into ammonia for ease of transport, and then export to Europe or potentially other customers. So I know that's a matter of high interest, and so I want to put some of those dates there for your guys' future reference. In terms of the hydrogen exports to Europe, again, the timeline would be from 2026 onwards. Different projects are advancing towards their dates at different rates, but the first project expects to come online in, I suppose it's 2 years' time. The form would be ammonia, or green ammonia, as it's sometimes called. The cost, I believe the costs are all confidential between players. We are confident that Canada will be able to offer very cost competitive, ammonia imports to Europe. The reasons are, among the reasons, we do have a very, very good wind capacity factor in that region of Canada, one of the best in the Americas. We do have investment tax credits from our government to help scale up the sector, again, to help with economic growth while reducing emissions. And we do have a shipping advantage to Northern Europe over some other jurisdictions. Finally, geopolitically, we are a stable trade partner, and we do have environmental commitments. And we know that stability has become more acute of a need in recent years. I had mentioned that Canadian companies have a wide range of clean hydrogen production expertise. I appreciate that the world is a very heterogeneous place. There are a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about renewables. Czechia does not have the greatest wind or solar resources. Some regions also have challenges with respect to droughts and aridity. So the water intensity of clean hydrogen production could become an issue at some point as well. So I want to just check off some tick boxes. So we do have companies with expertise in electrolysis, with biomass gasification, large-scale gasification, pyrolysis. This is a way of using hydrocarbons, typically methane, natural gas, and then heating it in the absence of oxygen so that you produce hydrogen and solid carbon instead of CO2. And then traditional reforming as well. We do have a very well-developed carbon capture sector here. That said, we realize that not as many countries have the types of geology that parts of Canada have. So the main point of this slide is to emphasize that I'm sure that that Czechia will require a bunch of different routes, strategies for procuring clean hydrogen for its needs, and that we have expertise in a wide variety, a full menu of strategies that may be appropriate for Czechia or even for different regions within Czechia. Our association across Canada has about 180 members. Canada is very large, very diverse, so we have different divisions, if you'd like, different affiliates, subsidiaries in British Columbia, in Alberta, in Ontario. Across the country, we have 180 plus members, so closing in on 200. The hydrogen expertise of our members spans the value chain from production, whether it's renewables producers or hydrocarbon producers, industrial gas manufacturers. We have a lot of companies with specializations in infrastructure as well. This isn't just pipelines, but dispensing stations or hydrogen tanks. I saw from the earlier presentation that Czechia has a strong position in stainless steel cylinders. So that might be a topic of great interest to some of our companies on this end. Transformation, in this case, hydrogen fuel cells, electrolyzers, but as well, even internal combustion engines. There may be places where, in a constraint of limited supply, if you want to socialize hydrogen, then there may be some options to do so that the maximum number of drivers or people get used to handling hydrogen without needing to have very high volumes in the early days. Finally, end users, we have OEMs who are members of ours. And so much as we try to serve them with our members, perhaps companies like Skoda or Iveco, we might be able to have our companies work as suppliers or potentially even customers thereof. So I want to mention that. Of course, that information is only useful in terms of what we can explain to Czechia companies, what might be of most interest to our companies and vice versa. So in terms of our first ideas, before talking and getting more insight, I think there might be a lot of interest in the tank and cylinder expertise that we understand that Czechia has, in particular boilers and water tanks as well. And the reason for that interest is that Western Canada has the cheapest natural gas in the world. We're an exporter. And so unlike many regions, we have a lot of natural gas. We can generate hydrogen from it. And we don't have much electric transmission. Canada is a very broad country, not many people. And so even if other areas might not be as enthusiastic about hydrogen in the home, it actually makes a lot of sense in the Canadian context. Also on the transformation side, we do have many companies on the hydrogen fuel cell cluster that we have around Metro Vancouver, but there's always room for adding or at least considering evaluating different suppliers, different hardware providers. Again, there may be cost advantages that companies in Czechia may have, or expertise advantages that we aren't aware of yet because we haven't had those conversations until this call begins. Finally, in terms of what we can offer, again, we are very eager to listen acutely and very responsively to what we will learn today. We do know that Czechia is interested in ammonia imports from Canada, imports to Czechia. In terms of transformation, we know not just in North America, but Europe, worldwide, there is a strong desire to move away from perfluorinated compounds or PFAS containing compounds. And so we do have some companies here who have products that can replicate the performance of these perfluorinated compounds, these perfluoroalkyl membranes, or these Teflon-like materials, Teflon-like materials. Those are often used in the hydrogen sector. We also have membranes which are very useful for humidification in terms of decarbonizing buildings or increasing air circulation without adding energy costs. And hydrogen combustion engines and dual fuel. We can speak to those a little bit further. Finally, in terms of end users, so we have hydrogen fuels, we have fuel cell engines that we can provide, but also there may be some expertise in Czechia that is very tailored to some companies here in Canada. And we also want to mention that because we have a very broad cluster, there are opportunities where perhaps if some companies in Czechia are wanting to come up to speed on hydrogen, then some of our expertise might be able to help them as third-party engineers. If you have a customer, if you're the customer of a technology you aren't as familiar with, it's sometimes nice to have an independent expert to be able to advise you to make sure you're getting the best deal you can with your suppliers, the best engineering trade-offs. So I want to mention that as well. And I'm just going to finish off. My brother works for this company here. There's this big advertising campaign about some things in life. Cash is fine. Everything else has MasterCard. And so in much the same way, there are many things in life where direct electrification is fine. And for everything else, there is hydrogen. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe pass it back to Attorney. I'll let you take control.
Yes. Thank you so much for this presentation, Matthew. The next presenter is Sarka from the Czech Hydrogen Technology Platform. Sarka, please share your screen and take it away.
Only to be sure, Tony, do you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. So I would like to introduce not only HYTEP, but partly also Czech hydrogen ecosystem. Shortly about HYTEP, we were established in 2007 as a non-governmental organization. Today, we are an umbrella organization for all those who are interested in hydrogen. Czech Republic is much smaller than Canada, so we don't have only one organization for the whole country. Our goal is, of course, to support the development of the hydrogen economy, not only in Czech Republic, but also across Central Europe and EU, because as I will mention later, the development of hydrogen economy in Czechia is not only framed and conditioned by Czech legislation and Czech interests, but also by EU rules and frameworks. Today, we have more than 85 members, and our members are from all sectors. So our members are companies, but also research institutes, also public institutions. And last year, for the first time, HYTEP was joined by the city, and we hope this practice will continue, because several Czech cities is trying hydrogen mobility using hydrogen buses, so cities will be interested in. Similarly, like Canadian Hydrogen Association, we also work as advocacy body, as somebody who tries to advise to our members, particularly concerning legislation, norms on the national level, but also on the EU level. We organize workshops, matchmaking sessions, we organize and also participate on international conferences. Last week, we had a conference we call Hydrogen Days, and we already prepare Hydrogen Days for 2025. If you will follow our web pages, you can find all other information about the conference. And last but not least, we try to support our members by, for example, publication of catalog of products and services of member companies. You can see the QR code in this presentation, and I will present the QR code later if you would like to make a photo from this. Czech Republic has hydrogen strategy. Petr Mervart will later speak about it, so I will skip the issue. However, we prepare a new hydrogen strategy, which will be published this year, and hydrogen strategy 2024 make a general framework and basic framework for developing hydrogen economy in Czech Republic. The hydrogen strategy sees as a perspective to use not only renewable hydrogen, but also low carbon hydrogen. But as said, hydrogen strategy of Czechia will be introduced later by Petr Mervart. Today, in Czechia, we consume about 125,000 tons of hydrogen yearly. Unfortunately, only 2% of this amount is renewable hydrogen. The state of hydrogen production and consumption in Czechia now is that the biggest producers are also biggest consumers. These are mainly companies from chemical industry. The names you can see in the presentation. However, the biggest producer and also the biggest consumer of hydrogen is company Orlen Unipetrol, which, as you can see, produced last year 110,000 tons of hydrogen, which is almost 88% of all hydrogen produced and consumed in Czech Republic. Hydrogen mobility is still in its infancy in Czech Republic, but what we can see is the development of public transportation or use of hydrogen in public transportation. There are several cities testing hydrogen buses, for example, Prague, Ostrava, Havířov, Ústí nad Labem, or Most. Today we have 6 public fueling station for hydrogen, but we hope there will be a double number next year, and in 2030 we expect about 90 refueling stations. The biggest problem for Czechia and in comparison to Canada is the price. The price is about €8 per 1 kilo of renewable hydrogen today, which is the problem of climate situation, and I will touch the problem later. Concerning hydrogen projects, I mentioned hydrogen mobility, but also we have very good basis for innovations. For example, the company Tatra Truck, which develops the heavy-duty truck powered by hydrogen. We also test hydrogen trains, hydrogen buses, and we have a very solid basis for hydrogen research within universities and also within startups. The biggest project concerning hydrogen is project of the company Orlen Unipetrol. They call it Orlen H2 Eagle, which will be finished or shall be finished, is planned to be finished in 2030. And it concerns not only Czechia, but also Poland and Slovakia. And it will be a strong network of refueling stations across the whole region. Concerning demand for hydrogen and hydrogen technologies in Czechia, I would say this is not only a public transportation, but also, as probably expected, hard to abate sectors and industry with high future electricity consumption. In Czech case, it is chemical industry, automotive industry, and steel industry. Czech export is mainly based on automotive, and many companies are connected to producing cars at the end, including chemical industry and steel industry. When we talk to steel-making companies, they are afraid, or chemical companies, they are afraid about future electricity prices, about stability of supply of the electricity and the capacities of transmission systems. That is why these steel and chemical industries and automotive is interested in hydrogen technologies. And many companies already started the technological switch to either electricity technologies or hydrogen technologies. In Czechia, there are regions which are pioneering hydrogen. At least 4 regions have now hydrogen strategy: Karlovarský, Ústecký, Moravskoslezský kraj and region Vysočina. However, 2 of those 4 I would like to call hydrogen pioneers, and it's Ústí region and Moravskoslezský region, which very hard work on making foundations for hydrogen valleys. Concerning hydrogen companies, which are producing technologies, components, and so on. Similar to Canada, we have companies producing various parts and technologies for the whole value chain. However, of course, not in so huge number as Canada has, based on the smaller number of companies and inhabitants. So this is only a short overview of what our companies produce in hydrogen. I will skip stakeholders, but I would like to say that Matthew said before that Canada could be a good partner for exporting hydrogen. This will be for Czechia very important, because Czech Republic and its climate situation does not make able to produce enough renewable hydrogen by using solar or wind or other renewable energy. So in the future, Czech Republic will need to import it. We expect that for import of renewable hydrogen, we will use repurposed pipelines. You can see the map of today's pipelines in the upper right corner. Particularly, we will use the connection between north and south. We have 2 interconnectors with Germany, one in Sachsen, another one in Bavaria, and then we expect especially to use this connection between east and west coming from Bavaria and going to Slovakia, and interconnections to Austria. The Czech hydrogen stakeholders expect that hydrogen will be imported from North Africa, maybe from Ukraine, and then from North Germany. It needn't be necessary hydrogen produced in North Germany, but Czechia is a landlocked country, and we necessarily need to use those stations positioning in North German coast. Czechia is part of European hydrogen backbone. The map which you see on the upper side of my presentation is the part of the European hydrogen backbone, and you can see the interconnections between countries in Central Europe. Concerning hydrogen infrastructure, we are just in the stage of developing it. The development of hydrogen infrastructure is based on Czech national plans as well as EU plans and norms. Concerning mobility, we expect, as other EU countries, to build each 200 kilometers a refueling station, and all Czech big cities shall have one refueling hydrogen station. Why Czech Republic will be unfortunately so dependent on import of hydrogen is that we also don't have a very good condition for seasonal storage of hydrogen. The German or Polish or Austrian situation is much better. So that's why we don't expect that we could store a large amount of hydrogen here. Czechia is just now part of 3 hydrogen important projects of common European interest, which are mainly planning to develop the pipelines, hydrogen pipelines, and the necessary infrastructure. Here you can see the evidence, while we a little bit fight with the reasonable price for renewable hydrogen, because the Central Europe is very poor having wind, and we have a small amount of solar electricity or sunshine. We demonstrated on these 2 maps. And to produce renewable hydrogen, we of course need renewable electricity. And despite EU expect that renewable electricity capacities will double, which is the graph on my presentation in the right corner. If the EU, despite the EU expect the increasing of these renewable capacities for electricity, the Czech situation is not very optimistic. However, if according EU rules we will be able to produce renewable hydrogen using nuclear electricity, the situation of the country will be much better. But this is rather the issue of the future, because the Czech government just now opened the tender for nuclear power plant to be built. We also work on legislative issue. However, it's only a temporary problem, because as Petr Mervar will also mention, we move forward quite quickly. So that's all from me, and thank you for your attention. And if any questions, I will be happy. You can write me or ask.
Thank you so much, Sarka. Next up is Janet Howard from Fasken. She'll be giving a brief presentation on the Canadian government hydrogen strategies. Take it away, Janet.
Yeah. Thanks very much, everybody. Can everybody see the slides?
Yes.
Terrific. So I'd like to thank the Canadian Hydrogen Association for the opportunity to present today, and thank you to everybody who is attending. The 2 presentations have been tremendously informative. In particular, Sarka, thank you for sharing the details on the opportunities and the strategies in your neck of the woods. Hopefully what I can do here is show some of the synergies that I can already start to see emerging based on our understanding of what we're doing here in Canada, and with a greater understanding of what you're focused on over in Czechia. I think that there are definitely opportunities in which strategic partnerships can be pursued. So I'm Janet Howard. I'm a lawyer. I co-founded the Hydrogen Energy Advisory Team here at Fasken, and I've also had the opportunity to serve as vice chair on the board of Hydrogen Ontario, which is one of the provincial affiliates of the Canadian Hydrogen Association. So over the last 3 years, since the release of our hydrogen strategy back in 2020, I've had the privilege and the opportunity to learn a lot about the industry from various stakeholders, not just here in Canada, but across the globe. One of the things I take away from those conversations, that engagement, people are really willing to teach and bring people on board to increase the knowledge and share what everybody's doing in a way that I think is a really important thing going forward to seize on some of these opportunities. To get into our strategy, It was released 3 years ago, and there's been considerable thought and momentum with respect to what we're doing. So I don't want to dwell too much on what this document originally had to say, but I think it's important to flag a few of the key concepts in the document just to contrast where Canada sits compared to other countries around the world, to provide a bit of an opportunity to understand what Canada might offer in terms of complementing the strategies of other countries. Canada is rich in the feedstocks that produce the clean hydrogen. So people on the call might already be aware that there's robust oil and natural gas reserves here in this country. We also have a lot of hydropower in Quebec, and there's significant wind assets on the east coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, which Matthew has alluded to. We also have terrific geographic assets, which relate to our ability to store hydrogen. So where certain countries might not be similarly situated, we've got salt caverns, we've got aquifers. We're positioned to be able to produce hydrogen and also store it. And there was focus in this document towards positioning Canada to be a major exporter of hydrogen. And I want to flag that there was reference to new markets. I think that the Canadian government post-COVID was very excited, creating robust economic growth, creating jobs in the aftermath of COVID, to focus on the ability we have to establish a new industry, a new export market. At the same time, I want to contrast, and I hope it comes out of my presentation, now that things have evolved, there is increasing domestic demand for the hydrogen as well. And that's not to say that it could potentially restrict supply to other countries, but these maps that I've put together are intended to showcase where the hydrogen, where the ammonia may be coming from in certain parts of the country, to showcase how the development of the export market will hopefully promote the development of our domestic market at the same time. So this is a graphic. For those who may not be as familiar with the Canadian landscape, just quickly, this was in the 2020 document. Our West Coast, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, that's where the oil and natural gas reserves are found. In central Canada, we've got clean grids here in Ontario and Quebec. A lot of the grid in Ontario, most of it, is powered by nuclear energy from two particular power plants, Bruce Power, OPG. And in Quebec, something like 99% of the electricity in Quebec comes from the hydropower. These are clean grids. In the West Coast, people use the term dirty grids. There are blending projects and certain opportunities there for, greening the pipelines, using the oil and natural gas to produce hydrogen with carbon sequestration technologies. The folks out here are focused on those opportunities. In Ontario and Quebec, it's a bit different because the resource is different, the feedstock, green hydrogen through electrolysis. And then out on the East Coast, there are sizable opportunities to access the wind. It's time consuming. There's been a lot of focus on the potential for erecting wind farms, using the wind to produce hydrogen, which would require a hydrogen production facility, and then ammonia facilities. So when I hear reference to hydrogen exports, it's ammonia exports. It's the export of ammonia from that region of the country. This is how the picture has advanced over the last 3 years. I won't dwell on this too much, but you can see how people are focused on identifying how hydrogen will be produced across Canada. And it looks a little bit different depending on the resources that are available to each of the provinces across Canada. Just a point of flag, there's no national energy regulator in Canada. So there are some complexities that come from having to deal with provincial regulators in each of the provinces. Energy is regulated at the provincial level. Sometimes that can cause, complexity, delay. I think it potentially is a wonderful structure to be dealing with because at the provincial level, the resources are different. So we're set to have a very tailored approach to try and capitalize on the difference between the opportunities across the country, focusing on exports and also developing the domestic markets in a way that makes sense for each of the provinces to get things up off the ground and working the way we hope. This slide I included because there are some really large headlines that can be offered up in terms of some of the focus that's been put on the opportunities here in Canada to ramp hydrogen production, but also to invest in the manufacturing of technologies that are needed to get the hydrogen production facilities up and running. The first one, TESS, I'm sure people on the call have heard about Tree Energy Systems. There's plans to build a $4 billion green hydrogen project in Quebec. This is a project that when you read between the lines and you understand what that hydrogen is supposed to be used for, I would suggest that hydrogen is earmarked for domestic use, because the production from this project is anticipated to be used to decarbonize heavy industry and also to facilitate industrial end use in the province of Quebec. Perhaps that makes sense. Quebec is a landlocked province. It's in the middle of the country. That's going to be green hydrogen used to decarbonize Canadian industry. Contrast that to the next three announcements, where there's been a considerable amount of focus on these big international players. SK Eco Plant from South Korea put money in to build the wind farms, the hydrogen production facilities, ammonia facilities on the east coast of Canada. Bearhead Energy is another one focused on the east coast, wind opportunities, hydrogen to ammonia. They received their environmental approval for their project back in 2023. And just as I was preparing for this presentation, I saw that Everwinds, the other big player on the East Coast, just recently, yesterday, announced completion of its FEED study. So the last three projects are focused on producing green hydrogen for the purposes of export, but not in the form of hydrogen, in the form of ammonia. And that brings me to this slide as I'm focusing in to try and better understand the synergies, the ways in which Canada and CHFCA might be able to pursue some strategic partnership opportunities. My understanding is that the hydrogen is converted to ammonia, shipped as ammonia, and lands in the port of Rotterdam. So there are big press releases with respect to what's already been well underway since 2022, building the cracker in the port of Rotterdam to receive the ammonia. And then there are also similarly big announcements that have come from Germany and Canada, not just when Chancellor Scholz visited Canada back in 2022. Word has it he came asking for the natural gas, needed natural gas to address the war in Ukraine. He left with promises of, we will give you hydrogen. I think that frustrated the west coast of Canada. I think there's a very important place for the ongoing production of natural gas. There's room for both. It just has to be strategically pursued. Some of the hydrogen that gets produced from the natural gas resources will likely be shipped to Asia. Whether or not it comes through this, we're on the East Coast here shipping to Europe, it will somehow end up in Germany. And Sarka, your commentary around CHFCA being landlocked resonates with me, because there are synergies there between Germany, CHFCA, how you access the hydrogen that comes in there. Just something that I've been thinking on as I've been listening to you speak. This slide, for those who may be unfamiliar right now with the ammonia value chain and the fact that the product that's exported is likely going to take this form, this is how it would work. Whether or not there are opportunities in CHFCA for an offtake, people talk about hydrogen offtakes. Hydrogen derivatives is a big concept now that people are starting to grapple with, get their heads around in Canada. If someone doesn't need the hydrogen yet, do they need the oxygen? Do they need the deuterium oxide? Do they need the nitrogen or some other molecule, some other product that comes from the hydrogen? There are opportunities there to think through what the potential opportunities are for financing projects in a different type of format. I just flag it. This next slide, to reference Germany, this is the announcement I was speaking on. The federal government signed an agreement with Germany just last month that fast-tracked through the settlement of an MOU to sell Canadian hydrogen. This is where things get confusing. This is where people pick up the concept of hydrogen in the form of ammonia from our East Coast. And the dates, Matthew, that you offered up in your slide, we can all hope those dates will be met. I think it should be taken with a grain of salt. The wind turbines need to be built. Some of the environmental assessment work still needs to be navigated through, which is not to discourage the opportunities for securing the resource that's needed in Europe. But I think there's going to be some runway to establish some additional relationships, opportunities before the ammonia actually arrives. I saw reference in one of the other slide decks to what else might be of value to Canada in terms of supplying the equipment, the raw materials that might be needed to ramp the creation of the storage facilities, the hydrogen production facilities. I think there are opportunities there. I would be remiss if I did not flag the impact of the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act on the bigger picture here. It's probably no surprise to most on the call that Biden announced this production tax credit, which was intended to dramatically reduce the cost of hydrogen produced in the States. So this really was intended to fast track production in the States. The impact it had on Canada was to divert attention. Investors, strategic partners who were very much focused on Canadian opportunities have started to head south. Again, I think that the panic around what that might mean for the development of the Canadian industry has softened a bit because the complexity around some of the requirements, additionality, temporal matching, deliverability. I'm mindful of time and my other colleagues who are about to present, but that has created complexity, potential delays in terms of what it means for how fast these hydrogen projects can actually get up off the ground running. Canadians tend to follow the approach taken in the States. This language is starting to show itself in our language around how we have prepared for these Canadian tax incentives. Hopefully it might give us a bit of wiggle room to fast track some of the things we're doing in Canada while the Americans figure out on their side of the equation how they're going to navigate some of that complexity. So the Canadian tax incentives, I understand from Turney there was interest. This could be a presentation on its own. There were 5 tax incentives announced by the Canadian government. I think the important thing to flag here is that there's going to be government support, but only in the form of refundable tax credits to support what's happening on the West Coast. There's some rebates available for carbon capture, utilization, and storage opportunities. There's a clean hydrogen. It's an investment tax credit. It's not a production tax credit. It serves as a refundable tax credit for the upfront capital costs that get put into hydrogen production projects. We don't have a production tax credit. There's also something interesting from a manufacturing perspective. There are rebates offered for the manufacturing of hydrogen-related technologies. And then my last slide here is just meant to brainstorm in terms of what would potential strategic partnerships look like between stakeholders in Canada and CHFCA? It depends on how CHFCA wants to envision itself. Are you an investor? Are you an investor with money to help promote the manufacturing of technology, electrolyzers that we're developing here in Canada that could potentially be imported into your country? So is it the hydrogen you need and want? Absolutely. I hear what Sarka is saying. At the same time, it's an interesting opportunity. It doesn't matter where the wind blows, where the oil gets dug from, it's technology. If there is nuclear capacity, small modular reactors, that's a focus that Canada is starting to turn its attention to as well. Hydrogen production projects, just like SK Eco Plant, it could potentially be a way you secure offtake off the bat, or as a pure off-taker, signing up to the offtake agreements now with some of the hydrogen ammonia production projects taking shape. There are opportunities to be a joint venture partner to develop some of the manufacturing production facilities and to provide distribution and storage solutions potentially in Canada to secure access to the resource that you might need in the coming years. So this is me. There's my contact information, and I would welcome feedback or engagement from anybody on your side of things or any colleagues. I think that there are tremendous opportunities to work together with HITEP as well. Sarka, I think that a lot of your initiatives align very closely with what the Canadian Hydrogen Association is looking to do.
Thank you so much, Janet. I'm mindful of time, so we're just going to move on quickly to the last presenter of the day, Petter Mervart. Please share your screen, and I think David Mueller will also be speaking alongside you.
Yeah. Okay, so David, do you want to say something at the very beginning, or shall I start?
Yes, thank you, Peter. I can start with a few comments, and I will limit myself just to a few sentences for the purpose of time, because you will elaborate on the details from the perspective of Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade. My name is David Müller. I'm from the Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade, Director General responsible for foreign trade and international partnerships. First of all, I really appreciate the effort of Canadian Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association and of Czech Hydrogen Technology Platform, which put this seminar together. I do agree that this is the excellent opportunity for exchange of knowledge, experiences, and strategies in the field of hydrogen between Czech Republic and Canada. And Matthew, I really appreciate you mentioning the personal ties, and Jaromír Jágr, he's still active player in the Czech Republic. Having said that, I don't have presentation because I wanted to be brief, but I've got myself strong personal ties to Canada, serving in Toronto for 5 years, and on the wall behind me, I've got a couple of posters and pictures from Canada. So that's the reason why I'm in particular interested in strengthening the ties and cooperation with Canada. As already mentioned, hydrogen is getting more and more traction. Just during the last couple of days, there was a memorandum signed between a Czech entity and South Korean partner last week, where I participated with Peter. Within the last couple of days, I spoke about potential cooperation in the sector of hydrogen with German, Koreans, Taiwanese representatives, and a couple of others. And this seminar is to a certain extent kind of peak of those conversations. Having said that, our minister visited Canada last year, and he discussed cooperation and potential for cooperation in the sector of hydrogen on federal level, where we would like to follow German example, which was already mentioned, both in terms of importing hydrogen, becoming a purchaser, and in terms of technology exchange and sharing of know-how. At the same time, our minister discussed potential for cooperation on provincial level, at least in Alberta, Ontario, and New Brunswick. I know that we haven't covered all the provinces and territories yet, but we are still at the beginning. At the same time, I was in Canada about a month ago, and we discussed what we can do together on G2G level with federal authorities in Ottawa. So there is definitely strong support from the government to do more. Indeed, and that was already mentioned, we perceive Canada to be extremely strong and promising partner, both in terms of production of hydrogen, because we will, and that was mentioned by Sharka and others, we will need to import hydrogen. That's inevitable. At the same time, HITEP is fairly strong association in terms of companies producing equipment and articles to be used. So potential to do more. One thing I would like to mention practically. We've got a couple of offices in Canada. We've got a consulate general in Toronto. We've got embassy in Ottawa, and we've got trade promotion office in Calgary and investment promotion office in Toronto. So would you like to know more in the future for Canadian partners what we can do together? Feel free to reach out to them. They can channel any request or inquiry our way to Prague, or you can do the same using contacts from HITEP. And of course, at the same time, we've been actively cooperation with Trade Commissioner Services in Prague. They've got excellent and strong team, and they've been engaged in the conversation about hydrogen cooperation. So those are contacts you can use for elaborating on the conversation and on the kind of kickoff, if I can put it that way, which we are having today. One last remark, I think it's extremely important to strengthen this type of cooperation from the perspective of government because of geopolitics and energy transition. Because we, as the representatives of government, are looking for strong, stable, and reliable partners. We took our lesson well in last couple of years, and that's why we are more than willing to support strengthening ties with Canada. And that's what today's seminar is about. And Peter, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. Actually, I am out of time, so probably I will not be able to squeeze myself into, let's say, 3 minutes. But nevertheless, I will start probably with some topics which has been opened by Janet and Matthew. Definitely, we see a lot of space for cooperation. But I would like to stress 2 or 3 things. The Czech Republic would be exporter of the hydrogen technology. So definitely we can find some way how to cooperate on some production or some development of hydrogen technologies. We are discussing also with some other countries how to go ahead with that. David mentioned the Korea. But definitely we can see a lot of possibilities in Canada as well. On other hand, I see the great opportunity in the import of the hydrogen because exactly as it was mentioned, Canada has excellent conditions, which is totally different than the conditions in the Czech Republic in regards of renewables. So we see that we are very complementary in that. And I will mention on the next slide how we are working with Germany and how we are ready for import of the hydrogen. And one more point, let's say 2 more points. We have also a lot of investors in the Czech Republic, and some of them already were very successful in South America. They invested in the production of renewable energy. They build their wind farms, and definitely we will include them into that discussion, and maybe we will find also some way for cooperation in that. And the last topic for my short notes, it was about that low and high pressure cylinders for storage of hydrogen. Definitely in that area we have something to offer. We have one company which is, let's say, producing high pressure cylinders which are already exported to the States and I think to Canada as well. And we have also a couple of companies which are making, let's say, the low pressure cylinders for storage of gases and hydrogen as well. So very quickly to the Czech hydrogen strategy. I'm using that slide as a review what we did in the last year. So we have some production of low carbon hydrogen. This is one company which is using electricity from nuclear power plants, and they are producing about 2,200 tons a year of low carbon hydrogen. We have first 2 or 3 producers of hydrogen by photovoltaics, but these are relatively small plants. We have a couple of hydrogen filling stations. 3 are public ones and about 4 are private ones. And we did some, let's say, the progress in mobility. We have one hydrogen bus operating in the Prague. We are discussing projects for implementation of some other hydrogen buses in North Bohemia. We had tested some hydrogen trucks, and we also had tested some hydrogen trains, and we are in very, let's say, close discussion with Germany to use the hydrogen trains on the cross-border connection, because we have mountains there, and in the mountains the battery cars and battery trains are not able to operate efficiently, and their range is very small. So it seems that these mountain connections could be, let's say, the good case for hydrogen. This is only to show you that we have the same maps as Canada, but with totally different colors. There is nearly no sun and no wind, because we have about 1,800 hours of wind a year and about 1,000 hours of sun a year, which is definitely not very good for production of renewable hydrogen. I'm saying that the Czech Republic is an excellent country for living, but unfortunately these weather conditions are not very good for production of renewables. So this was one of the main points we discussed, which was discussed during the preparation of our hydrogen strategy. We also published our first hydrogen strategy about 3 years ago, and we had a feeling that we will take it, only a little bit brush it off to improve something about the technology, to change some figures, and we will publish a new one. But at the end, we realized that it's totally different, that old one is not suitable for today. And the biggest issue was that we really need to, let's say, find a way to decarbonization, and that journey is not straightforward. We really need to change the direction totally. And I'm using the analogy that it's like sailing against the wind. You know? So if you have your target in front of you, but it's against the wind, so first you need to go right, after to left, to right and left, and finally you will reach your target. And this is the same with our hydrogen strategy. So we divided the approach and implementation of the hydrogen in the Czech Republic into 3 stages. The first one is called local islands. In that, we are not able to produce too much of hydrogen, and all the produced hydrogen will be very expensive because of our conditions. So the main goal in that stage is to create some hubs. The second stage, and this is the one which is very important for you and where we are able to find some synergies, is about the import of hydrogen. This is called the global bridges, and in that stage we would like to maximize import of the hydrogen and consumption of hydrogen. But with all these imports, we are losing our independence, and this is typical European issue that after the COVID and after the Russian aggression to Ukraine, we have problems with the suppliers of energy, and a lot of countries would like to be as much self-reliant as possible. So in that third stage, we are again looking we are again looking for the way how to produce the hydrogen on site in the Czech Republic, but for that we need new technologies which needs to be developed. So going back to that first stage, in that local islands, as I said, we would like to create as many of these islands or hydrogen valleys which are able to produce and use hydrogen. And in that stage, it's not our target to maximize the consumption because it's pretty expensive. We need to produce about 2,000 tons a year of hydrogen to fulfill our goals given from the European Commission. And another very important topic for us in that stage is that we would like to use hydrogen as a bridge between the renewables and nuclear energy. We are going to build some new nuclear power plants, and with hydrogen, we would like to use the surpluses from renewables as well as the surpluses from nuclear energy. So that second stage, that global bridges, is that one where we can import the hydrogen from Canada, and we are building our hydrogen pipelines. And frankly speaking, this is one of our advantages in hydrogen arena, because as you can see on that picture on the left top, we have about 3 main lines in the Czech Republic, and each of these 3 main lines means that there are 3 tubes lying one next to another one. Each tube is a diameter 1.2 meter, and they are going in one direction. So we are able to offload them relatively quickly, to take one of them and repurpose it for the usage of the hydrogen. We have the plants which are in line with European hydrogen backbone to make these pipelines ready for transport of hydrogen by the year 2030. So these will be our pipelines, which will be connected to the German pipelines. And as you mentioned, that your input port will be in either in Amsterdam or in Germany, so we are able to offtake the hydrogen from these terminals. And definitely we are also able to import some amount of ammonia, because we have today some production of ammonia for the hydrogen, and it seems that it's not a very good business case to bring ammonia to terminals in Germany, convert it into hydrogen, and afterward from this hydrogen make green ammonia in the Czech Republic. So in that case, it's much better to import that green hydrogen for the production of fertilizers directly from the ports. And that last stage is about new technologies. The 2 technologies which are in our viewfinder is nuclear energy, but we are talking about the new generation of reactors which are cooled by gas or by molten salt or molten metals, because we need a temperature more than 100 degrees to use that high temperature electrolysis, where that heat which is coming from that nuclear energy power plant can decrease the price of produced hydrogen dramatically. And another option is to use geothermal energy, which seems very easy, but in reality it's not very easy. And I'm talking with the people who spent 15 years in that, and they are still as confused as they were at the very beginning. This is about our export potentials in hydrogen technologies. As I mentioned, we have the company Cylinders Holding, which is, let's say, one of the leading world companies in storage in high pressure storage. We have some other technology companies. Iveco is a bus producer, and we are working on the project of intercity buses. And I must mention that intercity buses is something totally different than the city buses, because they need to have totally different capabilities. And I also mentioned Robert Bosch, which doesn't seem as a Czech company, but Robert Bosch is making a lot of research and development in the Czech Republic, and some parts of their fuel cells and their electrolyzers will be produced in the Czech Republic. And my very last slide is about the potentials for Czech-Canadian cooperation. As I mentioned, I see it in 2 areas, but probably after, let's say, the presentation of Jeanette, I should put there, let's say, the 3rd area, which is about investment into green technologies. But going back to these 2 options, the first one is definitely import of hydrogen in any form. And the second one is cooperation on the production of the technologies. Yeah, so this is, let's say, short overview from my side.
Thank you so much, Petter. We are a little bit over time, but I do see most people have actually stayed on the call. I'm just going to give everyone 5 minutes for a quick Q&A session, and then after this meeting, I will be sending out the presenters' slide decks, and then as well connecting the attendees with the speakers if you did have any further questions. I'm just allowing the camera and mic to be turned on for attendees now. You should be able to turn your cameras and your mics on. And if you had any questions, please feel free to chime in, or you can also put it in the chat.
Maybe I should mention I do need to go help our younger son prepare for school here in a couple minutes. So if anyone does have any immediate questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them, or perhaps later on in an email. I'm just 11 minutes late helping our younger son go to get ready for school.
Yeah. So we'll just answer this one question from SRAM. It says, do you have plans in Canada, any offshore hydrogen production? I'm guessing that means, do you have any plans in Canada for any offshore hydrogen production?
Yeah, so there have been proposals in Europe about electrolyzing within an offshore wind turbine, electrolyzing hydrogen and shifting that over. All the plans that I'm aware of involve bringing the electrons back to the shore and then doing the electrolysis there. Some of the projects that Janet pointed out, that I pointed out, do involve offshore wind turbines in addition to onshore wind turbines.
No, because frankly, if you have enough space onshore and enough wind onshore, it's cheaper and easier.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's okay. So in Europe, we do not have so much space onshore.
Right. Yeah.
Probably with exception of Scotland.
Okay, I will have to run now, so thank you all very much.
Yes.
I will send that presentation over to Turkey. Thank you all. If you do have questions, be happy to try and answer them as best we can after the fact. Just send Turkey an email and we'll do our best. Thank you all very much. A pleasure meeting you.
Oh, thank you, Matthew, and looking for cooperation.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, same on this side.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we just have one question. Could you provide a contact for company manufacturing fuel cells? I think this would be best answered probably through an email. I will you can contact me after this, and everyone here will be receiving an email from me with the presenter slide decks and the speaker contact information. So we're 13 minutes over time, so I will let everyone go. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and it was great having everyone here. And yeah, I'll let you guys return back to your days. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye.